Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on OECD maturity models. Thank you for joining us today, and we are happy to see that so many of you are interested in this topic. I'm Sofia Giovanide, advisor at the OECD Forum on Tax Administration, and I will co-host and co-present this session with my colleague, Rana.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rana Shambulaya, also advisor at the Forum on Tax Administration of the OECD.
The purpose of this session is to first introduce how the OECD maturity models work, and then we will go deep dive into the digital transformation and gender balance maturity models. We will have two guest speakers who will talk about use cases and the self-assessment they conducted in their own tax administrations. So here's a plan for today's discussion. And I will move now to the background of the OECD work, what we are doing on the Forum on Tax Administration, and Rana will talk about task force and tax crime work a little bit. The maturity models are, most of them are made by Forum on Tax Administrations and their member countries. So we have 53 members, including all OECD and G20 members. And our work at the Forum on Tax Administration is focused on sharing the good practice and collaborate on OECD initiatives. Our work is supported by FTA Secretariat, which I'm representing today. And what could be interesting for you, we have different communities of interests. Here's a link. You can go and check 15 different communities we have so far. Some of the communities opened their sessions for non-member OECD, non-member FTA countries. So you can attend some of the interesting sessions. If you closely work with your regional tax administrations, they are partners, and we are sending invitations to them. We have a very diverse and broad workload, but we have three priorities coming from FTA plenary last year. The first priority is global capacity building, and this workshop is part of our capacity building work, and you will hear some of the capacity building initiatives later. The second priority is pillar implementation and tax certainty. And our third and last priority will be this year and then the next year as well, supporting digital transformation and tax administration. So I will pass to Rana now to continue with the task force and tax crime work.
Thank you, Sophie. So just quickly talking about the OECD Task Force on Tax Crimes and Other Crimes, or TFTC, more easily because they have also developed some maturity models. So it's the international standard setting body in the world that is specifically focused on combating tax crime and enhancing the link between tax authorities and other law enforcement authorities. The TFTC is focusing its effort around three main activities that you can see on the screen. First, the OECD 10 Global Principles for Fighting Tax Crime. In 2017, then in 2021, the TFTC has published the first comprehensive guide to fighting tax crimes that is called Fighting Tax Crime, the 10 Global Principles. This report sets out 10 essential principles covering the legal, institutional, administrative, and operational aspects that are necessary for developing an efficient and effective system for identifying, investigating, and prosecuting tax crimes while respecting the rights of accused taxpayers. Then the OECD Academy for Tax and Financial Crime Investigation, which mission is to support developing jurisdictions in their enforcement of tax crimes and other financial crimes by providing law enforcement authorities with the core skills required to combat tax and other financial crimes, and empowering them to implement and share this knowledge in their day-to-day roles. Last but not least, the tax crime maturity models I was just talking about. So the TFTC has developed two closely related maturity models that are designed to enhance the implementation of the 10 global principles for fighting tax crime. Also to promote the whole of government approaches to fighting tax crime in practice. So now let's move on to the maturity models. So as I said before, we have 9 maturity models that have been developed so far, including one not yet published, the human resource maturity model. We can see in green the maturity models that have been developed by the FTA, which are the gender balance maturity model, the analytics, the digital transformation, the enterprise risk management, the tax debt management, the tax compliance burden, and the yet to come HR maturity model. In red, these are the maturity models developed by the TFTC. So we have the tax crime investigation maturity model and the pilot interagency trust maturity model and trust perception survey. Most of the maturity models are available in French, Spanish, and English, and a few models are also available in other languages. They are all accessible from the OECD website, so you can just write on your browser OECD maturity models, and it's pretty straightforward to access, and you will be able to find all relevant informations there. So all these tools are designed to help tax administrations and tax crime authorities to self-assess their level of maturity in their main areas of activity, but we'll see this in more depth afterwards. So if you have any question on the maturity models, or if your jurisdiction is interested in undertaking its self-assessment against one or more of the maturity models, please don't hesitate to contact us using one of these email addresses that you can see on the screen. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Rana. I will just try to talk about purpose and usage of maturity models. And as I mentioned before, it's a collaborative effort of the tax administrations, those work to create this model. And the reason of this is they wanted to have some tools for self-reflection to carry out the self-assessment. And like Rana mentioned, we have 9 different models, but there are similarities. They are mostly conducted to be a good starting point for a different area, and to allow tax administrations to have open and frank discussion about the gaps and priorities coming out of this analysis and the landscape analysis they conduct when they provide this self-assessment tool. And what we received, feedback we received from tax administrations, it is the very good tool to start conversation and include all the stakeholders. And the models are not very prescriptive, and it's more like a process oriented rather than like being general metrics and scoring. The idea is to identify the process, find the gaps, list down the priorities tax administration wants to navigate. Then sometimes tax administrations end up having the strategy in the field, and it's very good to incorporate all the gaps they identified at this level. The second big good use of the models are comparison to other peer tax administrations, and it's not for the competition purpose, but it's for to find the administration who has some similar results in a different certain area, and to start communication with them. And sometimes they participate, and we will talk about capacity building programs. Maturity models are a good tool for them to work with other peer tax administrations who are more advanced in the field. So even though this is self-assessment tool, we provide some workshops and capacity buildings. But for this, I think it's better to, if you're interested, reach out to the certain secretariat, like Rana she already shared the link, the contact emails from FTA and task force and tax crime secretariat. So for each of the models, you will find more detailed information through the links we already shared. But we have some reports we will discuss in this during the session. and you will see some reports as a good resource, and they highlight some of the information about the maturity models itself. Rana?
Thank you, Sophie. So now that you have a better view or better understanding of what the maturity models are and their purpose, so I'm going to show you how they are built in practice. So all models follow the same rationale as how they are should be read. That's to say, both in rows and columns. So first, in rows, the model covers different major themes of tax administration or tax crime investigation, which will of course vary depending on the topic of the maturity model. So for instance, these themes can be strategy, governance, culture, data collection and use, but also budget setting in the analytics maturity model, or data management, or even risk identification in the enterprise risk management maturity model. Or for tax crime investigation maturity models, we can find the criminalization of tax offenses or communication with public, for instance. Then in columns, the model progresses through 5 levels of maturity, from emerging to aspirational, that we will address a bit deeper in the following slide. Here I've put the level leading into brackets because it doesn't exist in maturity models related to tax crime. For each maturity level, the different themes of the model are described by indicative attributes. These attributes are just indicative elements that are intended to help guide the discussion of the assessment group, to help identify the level that they feel is most appropriate for their administration. So here is a description of each maturity level. So we have the emerging level, which is intended to represent tax administrations that have reached a certain level of development, but still have significant progress to make in the area of covered by the maturity model. So I won't go through all the level of maturity because everything is well explained in the maturity models, but maybe the two main levels are the established one, where most of advanced tax administration or tax crime authorities are expected to be clustered, and the aspirational level, which is designed to look forward at what might be achievable in the medium term as the use of technology develops. In fact, few tax administrations or tax authorities are expected to be consistently at this level, but this gives ideas of what can be achievable when developing. So we'll now go through the self-assessment process, and Sophie will cover this part.
For the self-assessment, it is again, like there might be different aspects in different maturity models, but there are some similarities, and the four key tips we can share here, which is similar for most of the maturity models. The first one, I would like to highlight the assembling the group itself, which is, I would say, half of the work when you are deciding like to create a team who will assess tax administration by themselves. And identifying the team is important because to cover like different cross-departmental areas, and sometimes tax administration find it useful to have all the representatives and stakeholders. For example, we will talk about gender balance and digital transformation maturity models, and sometimes you should cover more than IT or analytics when you conduct the digital transformation maturity model. It's all about also the HR management and tax law, and all the systems should be incorporated. So it's not only the technology, but also other cross-departmental functions which will be covered. So it is very important to have all the representatives from different units. And then having a facilitator is also very helpful because we saw many self-assessment conducted by different tax administrations, and having facilitator is super helpful. What they identified, it's kind of to promote everyone to be represented and encouraged to engage more and have this very fruitful discussion. And the third when you're assembling the team for self-assessment is to prepare the pre-discussion seminar and read the model and have some idea, because the model, like the indicative attributes, when you are scoring against many different areas, some experts might have different ideas. So it's good to support this with the material which is provided for maturity models. So that's why they're having the pre-session and read the model before is also useful. And the last point to start self-assessment and when creating the team and setting the scene for self-assessment is to take notes. And when you have these actual sessions to take the notes, to kind of reflect all the ideas comes from the different teams and the outcomes which will be then very useful when you do actual scoring for each of the indicative attributes. Anna?
Yes, thank you, Sophie. So here are some important considerations for the administrations to take into account when preparing for the self-assessment. So first, as we already said, sufficient time should be allowed for the discussion in order to allow the self-assessment group to achieve relevant results. Then the administration should make sure that a conversation can be frank and open. That's to say that agents involved in the group won't feel any pressure because of sharing their opinion. Then remember that it's not one size fits all model, because it's possible that the descriptions from more than one level match the administration's situation, or that the administration doesn't fit all the description of an indicative attribute. Actually, the self-assessment group is the best placed to choose the level it finds best suits the situation of the administration. Finally, it's important that the self-assessment group think about a way to reach a view or a score where there is division within the self-assessment group on the appropriate level of maturity. This in order to avoid any deadlock during the discussion. So we usually draw this kind of graph based on the feedback received from tax administrations that have completed their self-assessment, which allows us to capture the resource that was needed for the administration to undertake the self-assessment. I've put here the results collected during the pilot phase of the gender balanced maturity model for your information. That shows that it took piloting administrations between 1 and 56 hours to complete their self-assessment, with an average of 1 working day, that's to say 8 hours. And the number of staff involved in the self-assessment group ranged from 1 to 44, with an average of 6 staff members. Now, Sophie will show you how the results are reported.
So you can see two different templates here, which is very simple, and to kind of report the results after conducting the self-assessment. And this template has two purposes. One, to have the similar format for everyone when tax administration conduct the assessment, they have to send the results to kind of we can add them to the heat map. Rana will show you in a second. And the third one, to have some key ideas what should be included, and it's just very simple templates for everyone to fill and send to the FTA and TFTC secretariats.
Thank you, Sophie. So as said by Sophie, based on the results of the self-assessments received from jurisdictions, we build this kind of heat map that easily captures the diversity of maturity levels between administrations through the use of colors. So dark blue is used for the emerging level, and the more we progress toward the aspirational level, the more we get to the orange-brown color. As you can see, the administrations have been anonymized using letters to avoid any pressure or competition between countries. The first benefit of this graph is that it promotes knowledge and experience sharing between jurisdictions. This because when an administration is interested in knowing more about what is happening in another administration that have self-assessed itself at a higher level, then the reporting or the requesting administration can contact the FTA Secretariat, who will reach out to the requested country and ask if it agrees to be put in contact. So this allows bilateral exchange of knowledge. The other benefit already mentioned by Sophie is that it can help an administration visualize where it sits compared to other administrations. So if, again, if you're willing to share the results of the self-assessment of your jurisdiction or would like to be put in contact with another administration that has self-assessed itself, don't hesitate to contact us through this email address, fta@oecd.org. Also, be aware that at this stage, there's no publication of results for TFTC maturity models in this kind of heat map. So now we'll dive deeper in two maturity models, the digital transformation maturity model, then the gender balance maturity model. So Sophie, over to you for the digital transformation maturity model.
Thank you, Rana. Yes, I will talk about the digital transformation maturity model. And before I will go to the building blocks, and we should have a speaker for this one who will kind of explain a little bit more about the process and the outcomes they find when they conduct the model in Liberia Revenue Tax Administration. Before, I would like to review a quick background how the model was created. So the inspiration for creation of the maturity model on digital transformation was Tax Administration 3.0 work, which is also the work and the future vision of tax administration provided by the Forum on Tax Administration and the member jurisdictions. This vision comes from the initial idea to give the journey from digitalization to digital transformation. And you might remember Tax Administration 3.0 is considered as paper-based process, and how the paper-based and manual processes are then converted to a digital. And then followed to this, it was Tax Administration 2.0, which is more like some automated processes, but still not there, the fully automated and fully digital systems. So Tax Administration 3.0 is the idea of future tax administration. We see like everything happens in an automated manner, and it is closer to real time and event-based taxation. And these systems and processes are taxpayer-centered and it provides the compliance by design, which means the systems can talk, and natural systems of taxpayers and tax administrations are interacting, and all the stakeholders are getting the information they want. And this is the future vision, and have different building blocks in it. When Forum on Tax Administration was thinking about creating the model for digital transformation, the idea was like to identify the starting point for tax administrations. Where are they current level of maturity? And it might be different for different process. Some of the advanced tax administration might still have some processes they need to convert paper-based process to the digital process. So some of the aspects might be still in a different level. So this is good starting point to identify, go through the different building blocks and see where our current standing is when we are conducting this self-assessment, and then prioritize what could be done in the future. Rana, maybe you can go to the next slide. And yes, the maturity model, like other digital transformation maturity model, is like other maturity models are for self-assessment. It's a diagnostic tool, we call it, and allows tax administration to compare as well, like we mentioned with other models. And we had over 60 tax administrations so far completed the DTMM, and some of them end up having the roadmap and the gaps identified to follow when they are considering to have digitalization or digital transformation strategies. The model is available in English, French, Spanish, and Arabic, and you can reach out to the model and its descriptive part of the model and report to the link you see. I will quickly touch the results here. So this is the heat map we were talking about. When tax administrations are sending the results, we put them in an anonymous way, so it's not visible. But it's good tool to compare them to each other. And you can see on the left side all the indicative attributes, which is 13. And here you can see some of the indicative attributes are still like blue, and it goes from dark blue to the dark brown. So you can clearly see here there is some administrations who still need to work to be established and going from established to aspirational in different components, like, for example, HR strategy and skill set development. And as I mentioned before, a digital transformation strategy is not only the IT and technology and having everything in place automated, but also like HR and skill set development and rule of law and smart type of contract, how to so to say, like when that legal agreements even are executed. And if you go to the model in depth, you see all these indicative attributes and how they are scored against different descriptors. Rana, maybe go to the next slide. And the capacity building programs we are providing for this specific model is we are working with Tax Inspectors Without Borders Secretariat. There's a program under the TIWB, which is digitalization of tax administration. And in this program, tax administrations can request support in developing or revisiting digitalization strategy. They also can get high-level strategic advice on specific digitalization areas. And the third variation of this program is self-assessment based on DTMM. The workflow, if you want to imagine how it works, there's a formal request coming from tax administration, and then we work with our partners from UNDP and tax administrations who already conduct the self-assessment or having some good digitalization strategy, and we find the perfect match or best match could be possible for tax administration who is requesting the support. And there are some workshops, sometimes remote, sometimes hybrid and on-site, provided under this program, and where the tax administrations host and partner are sitting together and work and share experience and doing knowledge transfer in the digital transformation area. So then we do some evaluation survey and to follow up and see if the goals they set together are achieved. Rana, next slide. So besides this capacity building programs, we also have some resources, some reports, which those reports are reflecting all the work conducted before and insights coming from these different capacity building programs. This is one of those reports who kind of covers all of the journey from digitalization to digital transformation. And you can find some good case studies and examples in this report, which is already published on our webpage. And the next slide, we will see we have some successful use cases recorded on the DTMM. First one is the seminar who is recorded between the tax administrations Sweden, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. And it was the It was a self-assessment program with Liberia and Sierra Leone, and the Swedish tax administration was supporting them as a partner administration, and they provided kind of mentorship for them. It was part of the TIWV DTA capacity building program, as I mentioned. And you can see the webinar recorded on this self-assessment, and the administrations sharing themselves the useful insights from the DTMM, and they share also how they use the results of the self-assessment. And another video is highlights from Rwanda Tax Administration, and they're sharing how they used digital transformation maturity model to kind of go through the business processes and identify some gaps and improve taxpayer services. And then they created the roadmap for their digital transformation strategy. So both of the videos are available, and you can hear from the tax administrations who already conducted this self-assessment. The next slide, here is upcoming reports we are working on, and the first one will be Tax Administration 3.0 strategic actions, which will kind of reflect all the progress towards the TA 3.0 vision. I mentioned how tax administrations are seeing some strategic actions could be done to move closer to the seamless taxation and future tax administration. And the second one will be more like a step-by-step guide on developing the digital transformation strategy. It will have the case studies from developing and developed countries. So also you can see some process maps and ready useful templates and flowcharts in the report. And we expect to have this available in public this year, maybe later in the second half of the year. I think that was all what I wanted to share.
Sure, thank you, Sophie. So quickly on the gender balance maturity model. So it's one of the practical tools that have been developed by the Forum on Tax Administration in order to help tax administrations improve gender balance within their administrations. This maturity model was developed in cooperation with the African Tax Administration Forum, the ATAF. As with all other FTA and TFTC maturity models, we started with a pilot phase that lasted around a year. The aim was to get feedback from countries on what could be improved in the model so that it would be applicable to as many countries as possible. This was not an easy task because each administration deals with this topic differently. We targeted a wide range of countries, including FTA member countries and non-FTA countries among members of our partner regional tax organization. So we are very pleased with how the pilot has been received by countries. As we have collected self-assessment from 51 jurisdictions, including many of the countries attending the meeting today, which is highly appreciated within the FTA Secretariat, and we thank all the jurisdictions that have participated to the pilot phase for their commitment to making this project possible. So why choose gender balance as a topic for maturity model? So it goes without saying that gender balance is constantly showing to be beneficial to all organizations and to society in general. Within government, some administrations report that gender balance helps improve performance and resilience within their organization by promoting equality among staff and ensuring a peaceful climate. It also contributes to better decision making as the organization benefits from a diversity of views. Outside the administration and society, the tax administration also has an impact on gender equality through its processes and interactions with taxpayers. The other way for a tax administration to contribute to gender equality outside the administration is by providing tax policy makers with their feedback on what they see as the main drivers for gender inequality. So as I said earlier in the presentation, the five themes covered vary from the themes, sorry, covered from by the maturity model vary from one model to another. So these are the five themes covered by the gender balance maturity model that are strategy, governance, culture, data collection and use, and the external dimension. They are all pretty easy to understand, except maybe the external dimension, which is designed to capture whether and how the administration assesses the impacts on taxpayer arising from how it administers tax, as well as from the information it obtains from administering tax. So far, the self-assessment results are promising because we had 20 developing countries out of the 51 piloting countries that did the self-assessment, with more countries interested in doing the self-assessment, and some of them doing it a second time to test or to track their progress. And as I said before, the resources mobilized by countries to do the self-assessment was 6 people on average and 8 hours to carry out the self-assessment. And last but not least, the results of the self-assessment are also presented in this kind of graph, in addition to the heat map, which allows to see easily at a glance where the majority of administrations are clustered for each theme. So we can see here that the majority of administrations consider the maturity of gender balance within their administration to be at the established level for most of the themes, which is indicated here by the number 3. So now we will have the pleasure to listen to Mr. Damas Hunsunun from Benin, who has kindly agreed to present Benin's experience of the self-assessment. So he will make his presentation in French. Damas, si tu es présent, je te laisse maintenant présenter l'expérience du Bénin.
So, Miss Damas, you can take the floor to present. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody, for giving me the floor. Thank you. So I'm going to talk to you about the experiences in my country. I hope that you can hear me. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Benin's experiences in terms of the self-assessment for the gender balance model. In 2023, I think it was January or February 2023, Benin decided to perform this self-assessment. We followed various processes, and it started by putting in place the self-assessment committee. This committee is made up of men and women, and tax experts as well, and from support functions as well, like statisticians, planners, that kind of thing. So this is a group these people met to do the self-assessment. We didn't benefit from the basic training. So we understood how the model should work after we established the committee and how to fill out the document with all members of the committee, and we gave them a few days to get to grips with the subject, to read and understand what we needed to do. We organized a self-learning exercise, really, this self-training to understand how the model worked. After this, we moved on to the next step, which was the assessment itself. In terms of this assessment, we met over 2 weeks. It was 2 to 3 days every week. We didn't meet every day. And we didn't meet all day either. It was either a few hours in the morning or in the afternoon for us to work on this self-assessment. The main challenges for us were that the first version that we had was the English version. And I don't think it was translated very well into French. So there were a few issues understanding some of the concepts. That was quite difficult for us. I think that the updated French version is available now, which is very good. Some of the parts weren't written very well. It was quite ambiguous or unclear. So we reformulated it ourselves through our self-learning process so that we understood what the model was for, to make sure that the members of the committee understood what they needed to do, which was a great thing. It took us some time to understand what to do, but we did manage to efficiently use the model. We were able to perform the self-assessment following the methodology prescribed in the document. We then got some results. Next slide, please. So these are the results of the self-assessment that the Benin Committee drew up for the strategy. We thought that this was a good level for us. Could you maybe zoom in a bit, Anna? I can't see very well. Yes, thank you. Here you can see, so for strategy, the level was ideal. We believe that the strategy that we had, it does address issues of gender balance as a whole to guarantee equality for all genders, especially by addressing subconscious biases. Then for governance, maybe you can zoom out a bit so I can see both tables at the same time. Okay, I can make do with that. So for governance, the level
En progrès.
In progress. Yes, in progress. We believe that the procedures in terms of profiles and positions have been put in place to correct any imbalance between men and women and discrimination based on gender. But it isn't yet properly applied. For culture, the level is high because all members of staff at all levels is becoming more aware of the issue of subconscious bias, and a formal awareness raising framework is available, as well as the instructions. Then for collecting and using data We've at a lower level, it's currently in progress because we did note a lack of reliable data to guide data-based tax policies. So we're quite low down for the external dimension as well. There isn't really any specific data or studies that take gender into account. So we have identified in the meantime some strategic gender-based actions to try to correct these shortcomings. Next slide, please. So we did this self-assessment because at the DGI, since 2017-2018, we have been working on this question. And since then, we have put in place a gender balance committee at the DGI with the Carib project that we've put in place. We have been able to implement a gender-based strategic plan. And at the Benin Tax Administration, there is a women's association as well, and it works very well. And it's the most formal body in the tax administration for women. They organize various activities to foster and encourage female leadership, such as communications on public speaking techniques, on how to reconcile professional and private life, strengthening women's capacities as well. So different activities are organized by this administration as well. There is also an association who is currently led by a woman who is working towards female empowerment. Next slide, please. Here are a few statistics, very briefly. So out of 1,066 agents at the tax administration in 23, with an extra 28% now being women. In terms of the positions for each category, for category A, for example, there are 420 people total. The category is A is for people with a degree. So out of 420 people, 132 of them are women. Then for B, which is people with a high school education, out of 256, 73 are women compared to 183 men. So for category A, it's 45% of women in Benin's tax administration.
Thank you, Damas, for this presentation. So maybe as he's facing some technical issues, you'll be able to see the content of his presentation when we'll circulate the slides. we also had the other speaker from Liberia who faced some technical issues. So maybe Sophie, you would like to pass on a message to our audience on the DTMM?
Yes, we don't have Sylvester here yet, but the seminar I already shared the link. It is about the DTMM self-assessment conducted by the Liberia Revenue Authority with the partner Swedish Tax Administration. So if you're interested, you can go to the link and check some insights Sylvester is sharing in this video. And also we will probably share the presentation from him. And also we have some time limits here, just 6 minutes left. What I will just very quickly want to mention that maybe Sylvester wanted to talk about it. The process in the Liberia Tax Administration was quite straightforward because Sylvester himself took the e-learning module on DTMM self-assessment, and they created a team under the tax administration. They already had some discussions with the Swedish tax administration as it was part of the TIWB DTA program, and they had remote and on-site workshops. They found it very useful in a way, like the second phase of the program of the digital transformation work will be developing the roadmap for Liberia tax administration. And in this roadmap, they will list all the gap analysis they conducted together with Swedish tax administration. So the process is like I don't have that much time here to explain all the process for self-assessment, but it's like 4 key points you have to take when you try to do self-assessment in your tax administration, which is choosing the model first, because we have different maturity models we already mentioned. Prepare for the workshop if it's part of the capacity building or the workshop under the tax administration internally, and organize the workshop, which also covers the idea of having facilitator, having different representatives from different units, and the process and the sessions for each building blocks or depending on the maturity model of each area, and use the results in a way to kind of put the priorities, what needs some immediate attention, and what could be the next plan for take these results in and translate it into the action. So next slide, Rana. Yes, here we have yeah, it's like I think we can skip it for now. It's how this kind of repetition of the how the maturity model on digital transformation is useful, and maybe I can just conclude here and to left some few more minutes for you to talk. But the next step for Liberia tax administration is to have another round of workshops, which will be more on the roadmap and the business processes they have under the IT department, because they are kind of moving to the structural changes in the administration. So I think, yeah, I don't have any information Sylvester wanted to say for the next step here, but you will see this presentation, and you can read from here what the next step and is developing the digital transformation strategy for the Liberia tax administration. Rana, maybe you can cover this final slide we had.
Yeah, so I don't know why it was
Some
closed.
contact information and
yeah, so maybe I can go quickly without the slides, so I'm sorry about that. So the key takeaways from this presentation is that it is recommended to use the maturity models in order to help guide the administration throughout what can be capabilities for it. Maybe, sorry, I can share it quickly. Yeah. To understand their capabilities and their choices in achieving a greater level of maturity in the area that is covered by the maturity model. But it's also interesting to couple the use of the self-assessment with the use of metrics such as KPIs in order to support discussion with objective figures, which will give more weight to the results of the self-assessment. Again, so if you're interested in doing the self-assessment or if you have any question, please contact us using these email addresses. And last but not least, we would like to thank our donors without whom this work wouldn't have been possible. Thank you very much to all, and thank you for your interest and attention.
Thank you very much.